Welcome back to Mind Over Masculinity. I'm your host, Pragya. Today, we are taking a breath before we dive deep. Because this conversation is not just about leadership or ambition, it is about the emotional labor behind responsibility. The weight of identity when the world is watching, and the quiet truth that sometimes purpose chooses us long before we feel ready to claim it. Our guest, Dr. Cynthia, knows this tension intimately. The journey from classroom science teacher to principal, from multicultural mentor to doctoral scholar, from exhausted newcomer to seasoned school leader. It's a story that didn't just evolve, it demanded growth, reflection, and a level of emotional intelligence that most leaders never got close to cultivating. This episode is an exploration of why we step into demanding roles, what do we sacrifice, what cultural expectations shape our choices, and how identity plays into the way we lead and the way we show up for our communities. So take a breath, settle in. Let's peel back two layers of responsibility, resilience, and the courage it takes to show up when the world assumes you have all the answers. And with that, I welcome you, Dr. Cynthia. It's an honor hosting you today, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much, Pragya, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. And thank you for the wonderful introduction you shared about me.
And that was an honor, truly. And to start with, Doctor, you spent decades in roles that demanded constant emotional presence, right? And not just lightly, but deep emotional presence. So, how did emotional intelligence shape your leadership? Not in the polished resume sense, but in the everyday grind when you were exhausted or overwhelmed. So, how did emotional intelligence help you with your leadership?
Well, I think in terms of emotional intelligence, it's again being sensitive to others, putting myself in their shoes, empathizing, not sympathizing necessarily, but being able to empathize and meet people where they're at and try to understand them um, as humans. So, as a teacher looking at students in the classroom, they're not all the same. They don't all know the same information. They all grow up from different families. So, they have different influences. And at each moment, if this is at a high school, I can have 30 students in a classroom have different um, levels of needs, and maybe some of them are not as emotionally intelligent. So making sure that I let them know that I see them, or they might want to just hide in the background. Making sure that again I see them and make them visible, providing them space and moving them closer to the front, so that way there's some visibility. And so, in terms of how did it shape me, the more I taught and moved up into school leadership as an assistant principal and principal, the people I served, the groups got a lot larger. So now I'm serving um, teachers and counselors, and then as a principal, as well as assistant principal, I'm also looking at the people in the cafeteria or the bus drivers or the custodial crew and making sure that I communicate with them, that I see them, and that they know that I see them. So it's even though it can be exhausting, it's also an, a way to connect, and it just feels much better when there's that connection versus it's just a day in day out job.
I appreciate that. And thank you so much for actually letting us know how and what important role emotional intelligence has. And we to add on to that, what I have and what I know is that we glamorize emotional intelligence, Like it's a magic shield, but in reality, it's messy and it cracks under pressure, it stretches, it demands humility, and all of that shapes a leader, and all of that highlights what a leader does, right? And we also forget that leaders, they aren't superhuman, right? They're also humans, but they're just more considerate, and they have certain qualities, right? Which they, under pressure or under their messiness, have polished. And that is the great part about it, isn't it?
Just I agree in terms of, yes, that we do glamorize it, and it does shape leaders, but at the same time, some leaders don't have emotional intelligence, and they continue to not have emotional intelligence, and they don't connect with other humans, or they only connect with other humans that are similar to them. Um, so it's hard to to try to understand where they're coming from if they don't have that emotional intelligence. But yes, emotional intelligence is so important. Um, and we are all human. And like you say, sometimes people might think of the leaders or school administrators or people who lead, bigger groups, a country or um, an organization, that they hold everybody. They have to be the one that holds everybody together. But there also needs to be a time where the leader has to just kind of um, have that space to take a breather. And it's almost like, letting somebody else take over while the leader can just catch a breath. But yes, that emotional intelligence is really important. Otherwise, yes, they will crack. People will crack under pressure, and that's not what we want. We want to make sure that everybody is grounded. And as a leader, we have to set that example.
That is so, so true. And I totally agree to it. To move on, you've spent years studying multicultural education, right? So, how does your own cultural identity shape the way you navigated authority, and how did it become a source of your leadership, of what expectations of leadership you have, and what definition of it you have now?
Thank you. That's very interesting. So with that multicultural education, it was International Multicultural Education, known as IME, and that actually opened up my eyes in terms of who I am. Um, my background is, ethnically, I'm Filipino, um, and my parents were from the Philippines, but I grew up and I still continue to live in the United States. So so I'm Filipino American, and so some of my traditional family values are still with me, um, which sometimes gets in the way with how I can perform as a leader. So, for example, um, in the Filipino culture, we're expected, or the culture is about, being harmonious, working together. Family comes first. There's a hierarchy of, respect your elders, whether it's your parents or your older siblings, and your younger siblings have to respect the elders or elder siblings, or cousins. There's a formal word for that kind of respect. So if I am the older sister or older cousin, or just older in general compared to others, they might refer to me as ate, spelled ATE. If not auntie, because that would be somebody that's a little bit older. So um, there is that hierarchy of respect, and so navigating that being a person of leadership was hard, because as a leader, I was still in my early 30s, and now I had people I had to um, work with, or, they were either teachers or they were my admin assistant, my secretary, who were older in age than I was. So that was hard because I didn't feel comfortable giving them tasks to do. Um, or the custodian, hey, can you help me set up the cafeteria for a meeting tonight? That did not feel comfortable for me to ask them because it's almost like asking my elders to do something for me. In fact, it should be the other way around, you know, um, where I'm helping them. And so often at those times, I would actually go into those rooms and then help them set up the tables or help them move things around only because it was that that was part of my culture. And when I look back at it, I thought it was also important to share that this is my culture. This is how we are. We don't just boss people around and, show our authority, but we are there and we create this kind of family feeling of, and also with respect. I know that's kind of a long answer, Pragya, but hopefully that answers your question.
It totally, totally does. And that it's hard because, so many leaders of color or multicultural backgrounds know exactly what you're describing, right? And when these cultures, they come and become an amalgamation of a personality, it becomes a whole different sense of energy, and that is the most appreciated thing. So I love it, and that totally makes sense. Thank you for that.
Oh, good. Yes, and I think it's also kind of like that synthesis of, I may not know where they're coming from. They might be from a different culture. They might be from a different upbringing, but trying to understand where they're coming from or their culture. And if I understand it, then I'm able to kind of mirror what that looks like for them too. So there's respectfulness. Um, or if they are in a culture of, they're comfortable with debate, then I need to be able to turn on that debate in me, which is not always easy because in my culture we don't debate, but that is something that I would have to develop and continue to work on so that way I can get my point across.
It totally does, and I resonate with that truly. Um, So to move on, the narrative around leadership, it often says that if you want the role, you should already be ready for it and you should already work for it. But your story shows a different reality altogether, right? So do you think we romanticize a readiness to the point where it actually harms emerging leaders, from being their own selves? Because when you're asking someone to be ready, they are fitting themselves into a box or into a set of personality that they are not, but they're not themselves. So romanticizing readiness, is it actually harming emerging leaders, or does it have another way around?
I think in terms of when you say romanticizing readiness, um, I don't think we're ever truly ready, but we can continue to develop it. Um, I think in terms of it could do a little bit, not necessarily harm, but it could have different expectations that people might want from a leader. So the leader might feel like they're ready, or they've been feeling that they're ready, but other people, once that person gets in that position, if that person doesn't really know how to be ready, then nobody's gonna follow. No one will follow, and then things can not progress.
That's true. That's true. Thank you for that perspective. I love it. And
Thank you.
your experience of being a principal, it means being the face of the school, which comes with huge behavioral expectations and huge roles to play, right? So, do you think that level of scrutiny is fair? Or is it an outdated model of leadership accountability? And yes, what behavioral expectations would you like to change if this is not something that you feel fits in the society as of now?
I think things are starting to change. So in terms of gender, um, we're beginning to see more women um, than men as school leaders in terms of the face of the school, which helps others become um, to aspire to that. It helps others want to think, oh, okay, that person kind of looks like me. Um, I think I might want to also pursue that. In terms of behavior expectations, there are some behavior expectations in terms of the what a principal should look like, how they should behave. But at the same time, I do believe they need to be good models for that position because everybody is watching. Um, so let's say, for example, there's trash on the ground, and as a principal, I might say, "Hey, pick up that trash," or "You left your trash on the tables." Or and if the student picks it up or not picks it up, they can say, "It's not mine. It's no, it's not my job to pick it up. That's the custodian's job. What is my role in that?" And being the uh, positive role model, I need to just pick it up and not even have to ask the kids. So if I see something on the floor, I should be the one that picks it up. Otherwise, people are saying, "Oh, if I don't pick it up, it's okay that they don't pick it up." So it's important to have the same standards across the board. So if whatever I expect of faculty, staff, students, um, that I need to hold myself that same standards.
That's actually really great. And I totally get that. Also, as we proceed, I want to know that why has been the anchor of your full career, right? And that why, that curiosity is something that is appreciated. And thank you for that why too, because that is leading to you to becoming something, and reaching out to people again. But purpose is not static, right? Purpose is a whole subjective thing which flows in the direction you want it to. So have you ever felt disconnected from your why? And if so, how did you find your way back to what the answer of this why was? So yeah, pretty deep, but I'm curious, how was it for you?
In terms of my why, sometimes the question never came to me when I started the career. Nobody asked, why do I want to be a teacher? Why do I want to be an administrator? It didn't come to me. It was just more of, okay, I like teaching or I like kids. Um, but nobody asked, why do you like kids? Or why do you like teaching? Why do you want to go into administration? Um, why do you like being a principal? But when that question finally did come up, for me, and this is much later in my life, what is my why? What is my purpose? It just made so much more sense. And I think that should always be a question for everybody to understand what their purpose is, to have a why for what they do. What are they passionate about? And for me, when that question came about, it just was asked like 5, 7 levels deep. So the person says, why do you like being an educator?" And I gave my answer. So, "Why do you like that?" And they would ask that same question and with more information that I gave them, 5 different times. They would ask, "Oh, well, why does it make a difference?" "Well, because I wanna make a difference to those kids who, um, don't have access to education," or, "I wanna, make sure that the kids don't drop out of school." And why is that important? So again, those questions keep coming up. Why? 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 And then finally, it was my reason why is because I didn't want them to fall through the cracks. which was more personal on my end because I almost fell through the cracks because I didn't have the one-on-one guidance, attention at the high school level. I mean, I just took classes and took things for fun. Nobody called me out to ask me what classes or what school, what are my plans or aspirations. And so when I got to college, I just said, oh, I'm going to go to college. I don't know what I'm going to study, but I'm going to go to college. But had somebody ask those why, well, what are your plans and why do you want to do that? I think that would definitely solidify um, and my purpose. And then at the same time, now that I look at my whys, I always try to revisit it. So I kind of put it on my radar, whether it's the beginning of a new year, like 2026, I might evaluate myself and just kind of go, what is my why and what is my journey going to look like by the end of 2026. So that way I start and I can kind of go backwards and kind of go, okay, well, by the end of 2026, I want to be doing these things and these were my why. So that way it's not so much of a disconnect, but it's still kind of aligning and just reevaluating my purpose. But, that comes with age, Pragya.
It surely does, and those are all experiences, and that's powerful, right? Because we sometimes treat purpose like it's tattooed on our souls, and we forget that in reality it is something that evolves and it breaks and it rebuilds, and that all comes with experience. And your story, your life's journey, is a prime example of it. So thank you again.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
And as we wrap today's conversation, I'm struck by something simple but profound, everybody. Leadership is not a title, and that is what I'm taking today. It is a constant negotiation between who we are, who we're becoming, and who the world expects us to be. And our guest today reminded us that emotional intelligence is not perfection. It's everything that you can be, and it's the simplest step that you can take. And multicultural identity is not a box to check, and leadership is not about readiness. It's about willingness, courage, and purpose. And these are all the insights that I'm taking today. And if you're listening right now and you're wrestling with your own why, your identity, your expectations, or your next step, you're not alone. Trust me. These tensions don't mean you're unprepared. They mean you care, and caring is the core of real leadership. And thank you for tuning into another episode of Mind Over Masculinity. I'm Pragya, reminding you that growth does not always look powerful. Sometimes it looks like questioning, recalibrating, and showing up anyway. Until next time, stay grounded, stay curious, and stay true to your why, and take up all the insights that Dr. Cynthia has shared with us today.